everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and I got a fun show planned for everyone. I'm going to be going through a character tier list for Tolkien characters, which is going to be great. Though I think I'll have to do probably a second one because this one is going to be mainly focused. I mean, it will have a lot of the Lord of the Rings characters, but it's going to be heavily in sort of the Silmarillion and that area. So just mind that might be another episode in the future. But also, if you're watching this, please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you like the content on Plotlines and you want to see more of this. I'm also wearing my Valar uh, shirt, so it's themed properly because I think we're going to be going over them. They're going to be a part of the tier list. On Friday, I'm going to be releasing an episode with Mark from Tradmen about the Michael Collins movie and Irish nationalism, and all that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So look forward to that. Now, let's get started. So, as standard, we've got the S tier, A tier, B tier, D tier, C tier. There's no F tier. I think it makes sense for Tolkien characters not to have an F tier because they're all very well created. I apologize if there are some characters up here that aren't labeled. I was trying to find the best tier list to go off of. So hopefully this one is decent enough. And okay, let's get started. So let's find. I think Iluvatar somewhere. Actually, I don't think Iluvatar might not be on this list, but Iluvatar would be S tier because he's God and he's created this world, which is pretty great. Some of them are not labeled very well. That's one of the downsides. So I'm gonna start off with Aragorn, who is very much S tier because he is the king that returns. Obviously, he's sort of the culmination. I mean, of all the history of Middle Earth and the return of the nobility of Gondor and Arnor, the Numenorians sort of brought back to their strength, and I think Aragorn is just obviously an awesome character. He has an awesome sword. He is a Christ figure as the king. He for the most part is very consistent in what he wants to do. He starts, rag to riches kind of. He has such a long backstory. He's so old and he has such great experience. I mean, he single-handedly basically kept Gondor afloat even when he wasn't king. And you got to admit that's pretty impressive. I don't know about you, but to me that seems pretty impressive to keep Gondor afloat, even when Gondor sort of has just a steward, Denethor. So that's why Aragorn is A tier. Now let's just get rid of some of the really boring characters. Argon, I think, is one of Feanor's kids. So basically, he didn't really do much. He just dies, and that's his part of his character. I think these are Maglor and Mithadros. I think because they're not clear. It's not clearly labeled, unless Amber Rusa, which I don't think is a character, is a proper labeling, which I don't think it is. So I'm going to say they are B tier because they do sort of lose. They do lose their way many times, but they also do come back and have they. I think they raise uh, Elrond and Elros to become great, great rulers, and you can see that they tried at certain points to sort of come back into their own, but they were haunted by the Silmarils, and each of them dies or either disappears while handling one of the Silmarils. Um, I believe this is Ar-Pharazôn. Ar-Pharazôn is a probably A tier regarding being a villain. He amasses power. His hubris is so strong, so powerful that I just think it's it he's he's so powerful, and he uses his power in very much the worst way possible. And I think that's sort of in some ways, he's not an amazing person, obviously, but he, as a villain goes, he conquers Sauron, but then allows Sauron to manipulate him. But and I think from his perspective, he got a lot out of it until he sails for to Valinor and gets crushed by is it the Valar, or is it it's either the Valar or Iluvatar himself. I can't remember. Um, Varier is one of the Vala. She is the Weaver. We don't get much about her. She's the wife of Mandos, but I think she probably would go in D tier. She doesn't do that much. I think she'd be interesting to, sort of have a role in it, but I don't think she has much of a role. If Tolkien had expanded or expounded a little bit on her, I think that would be a little bit of a different story. But as of, you know, based on the Legendarium, she's not a great character. So um we got characters on each level, which is kind of cool. We got Argon, who's again basically just not he just dies, and that's his whole thing. He doesn't really do much. Varier, which she has a role in the world, the weaver of events and wife of Mandos, but she's not taking an active role. Mithadros and Maglor have uh, have this sort of back and forth between good and evil. They are very complex characters, uh, though the story doesn't really focus on them. Ar-Pharazôn has a very pivotal role in bringing down Numenorian civilization, and I think that's a very important element. And I think he's just caught up in his hubris. So I don't know who these two blonde characters are. So when we get to the end, we might be able to figure out who they are. Um, Arid Hell. She is the White Lady of Numenor. She kind of just goes off on her own and then gets married to a dark elf. So I like her imagery, and I like the way Tolkien deals with her, but I also think that she's very much she just kind of leaves. She has such an odd character. I think she wants to return to her family. I think that's why she leaves. Um, but I can't exactly remember. She's an interesting plot device, I think, in some ways. Um, Arwen is probably A tier. She's more in the background, but she is a big supporter of Aragorn. She obviously wants him to succeed in becoming the king of Gondor and Arnor because that will allow them to get married. That was Elrond's uh, basically that was what Aragorn had to meet to provide to get Arwen's hand. She is an elf and she wants to marry a man, and I think that's an important element in the story where Tolkien always wants to sort of unite these groups. In and It really takes a substantial amount of love, a substantial amount of fortitude, and um, to want to marry the other race, want to to marry between elves and men, and it's usually a great feat to do. And Arwen and Aragorn push through that. Aragorn gets to decide how he dies, and Arwen moves back to Lorien in sorrow, which is kind of interesting. So she has a lot of interesting points. I think a lot of people might say she doesn't have enough to do in the story because they want her to have more active role, but I think her purpose is more uh secondary. So she's A tier, but I do think Ar-Pharazôn is a cooler character. Just this imposing force who corrupts and destroys all that is good in Numenor, and I think uh, that's a lot. Enough said there. Bard, Bard the Bowman is B level. He becomes the the king of Dale, and he helps build back build back better, build Dale back, which I think is a impressive feat. Also, he kills the dragon. He kills Smaug with the arrow, which is also a great accomplishment in my opinion. But so yeah, we got this setup, or Bard sort of he creates another dynasty, or at least he inherits a dynasty and then resets up a people in Dale, and he um, works with the dwarves and the elves. And I think he's an interesting character from that perspective. He doesn't really do too much, but he has is him killing Smaug is an important moment, and I think that's enough to get him to B tier. Next is Baron, who I think is much cooler than our Pharazôn, but I don't think Baron is A tier. I think he is, or sorry, I don't think he's S tier. He sort of, uh, he is part of the remains of a group of men in the First Age, and he falls in love with Luthien. Let me see if I can find Luthien because we can talk about both of them together. Luthien should be here. Well, I'll just get to her when I get to her. She might be. Yeah, I don't know where she is, but we'll get to her in the future. I think that Baron doesn't live up to sort of the Aragorn level. He does, though. He's sort of like Aragorn. Aragorn has to win the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor. Has to become their king, and Baron has to get a Silmaril back from basically back from hell, basically. It's, it's sort of the harrowing of hell, but he has to infiltrate and get one of the Silmarils from Morgoth's crown, and him and Luthien, or his love for Luthien is so great that he does this. I mean, Thingol gives him the absolute worst mission to ever, take place, but he takes it on, and with the help of Finrod as well as uh, Luthien, they accomplish this, and their love is the reason that they are able to do so. So Baron, I think, is A tier. So as the first marriage between elf and man. Um, I think Arian. I think she is the sun, if I'm not mistaken. She is a very cool concept. She's in B tier. I think she gets props for being one of the only sort of fire spirits that stays loyal to the Valar, that stays loyal to Iluvatar and doesn't fall to she, uh she doesn't fall to Morgoth, which I think is impressive. But yeah. So yeah, we've got Arian, who is the represents the sun, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, someone correct me in the chat. Then let's go Elendil. Elendil's father, Amendil, is one of the reasons that they or basically Amendil tells Elendil to get his kids and get away from Numenor, and they sail as Numenor is being destroyed, and a gust of wind saves them from being destroyed along with Numenor. He is the leader of the faithful and the first king or high king of Arnor and Gondor. And he is also immensely tall and leads forces in fighting Sauron. And though he dies in the battle outside Mount Doom, he is successful in defeating Sauron at the battles in Mordor, even though his son takes the ring, and the power of Sauron still lives on because of that. So I think Elendil definitely gets some props for that. Let's go Boromir. Boromir. It's really, this list is very hard to do because all of these characters are very good. I do think Boromir is better than Baron. Actually, no, just second to Baron. Better than Ar-Pharazôn. He is the son of the steward Denethor. We know his story very well from Lord of the Rings, and he's very much in the Fellowship of the Ring. He is very cognizant of the hobbits. He wants to protect them, and his desire to help his city, desire to uh, give himself power, is the thing that brings him down. He wants to he wants to save his city, and he thinks the only way to do that is to take the ring, and what overcomes his better judgment, and he betrays the Fellowship of the Ring. But he also, in the end, comes back to his senses, and I think that's also important to note, that he does come back to his senses, and he does redeem himself in fighting and dying to protect Merry and Pippin, even though Merry and Pippin do eventually get captured. So Ecthelion, Ecthelion is a really awesome general or city guard leader in Gondolin. He fights Belrogs and he fights to the death in I think the town square, and I think it's an impressive feat. He does decently enough to defend the city, and though he loses, he does. It's a valiant fight that he carries on in defense of the city. So I think he gets B tier because of that. It's just an epic moment. I would love like Ecthelion has one of the coolest moments. It would be really I would love to see a the Fall of Gondolin as maybe like an animated movie or something. I think that would be really cool. I mean, it would be really interesting as a non-animated movie, but I almost think they would just mess it up these days if it was not an animated movie. They're less willing to destroy you have to be more creative to make an animated movie in some ways. You can easily turn I mean, just look at The Rings of Power. You can easily turn things into a bad live action show. So that that's kind of the main that'd be my main reason for wanting to see The Fall of Gondolin maybe as an animated movie these days. I think it'd be pretty cool. Who is this? This is I don't know who this is. Um, Caranthier is uh one of Feanor's lesser known sons. I think he has a little bit bigger role than Argon, so he gets D tier. Um, Celeborn gets uh hmm I think B tier. He is a noble member of the what is it? The family. Or he's a Sindarin elf, so he's a gray elf who then marries Galadriel, and they eventually become the Lord and Lady of Lothlorien. He very much doesn't like dwarves, which is interesting. So he gives sort of that he's very reminiscent of the death of Thingol. He remembers that and he holds it against dwarves because of that, even though the dwarves he meets later on aren't the same aren't the same dwarves going forward. um so we got Elwing. Elwing is the daughter of, I think it's Dior, the daughter of Dior, who marries Erendil, and she she is the reason that Erendil and Elwing become elves because she wants to be an elf. So they're half elf, so they get to decide whether they want to be elf or man, and they decide that they want to be elves because Erendil, though he wants to be a man, in sort of the like they're given the choice. This isn't like the transgender stuff, but this is a different setup because basically they were born of half elves, so therefore they were given the choice. But after that, if they chose to be men, their ancestors wouldn't have a choice going forward. Anyways, I think Elwing is an okay character. B tier. She's a lot to do. She saves one of the Silmarils, and I think jumps into the sea, turns into a bird, and then brings the Silmaril to uh, to Erendil, her husband, on the ship. Let's see if I can find Erendil, and then we can talk about him as well, because I think they are important together as people. I keep not knowing where the other ones are where I want to talk about both of them. It's- That's unfortunate. Oh, there it is. Erendil. Okay, so Erendil, he is a pretty impressive figure because he probably up at A tier because he does everything in his power to plead on behalf of elves and men in order to get the Valar support as Morgoth is winning the battles and destroying all of elven and man civilizations on what is it on in Balerion. Balerion is being basically taken over completely, and all the elves are going and men are going to be killed. And Elendil goes to the Valar and pleads for their help. As I said, he and Elwing, his wife, they become elves, and he helps lead the forces of the Valar into battle against Morgoth in uh, sort of this enormous war. I think it's the War of Wrath. I can't remember which war it is, but it casts Morgoth down and into the void, and it's just I mean, also Arendelle is now a star. He is basically a star, kind of like this one of the Vala or one of the Maya, I guess, is a is the sun. It rules the sun. Same thing with the star of Arendelle. Dior, I would say, is D tier. He is the brother of Luthien. He is the king of what is it? I can't remember what Thingol's the king of. Um, but anyways, he is the successor of Thingol after Thingol is murdered. He leads the forces against the dwarves, him and the Ents, and they defeat the dwarves. And then basically he is eventually defeated in a battle by Um, oh, he gets attacked by Mythadros uh, and someone else. Or so basically, the sons of Feanor attack and destroy the kingdom. He dies, and his sons disappear, uh, and he is he's basically a failure. Though he does seem like an interesting character outside of that. Finrod Finrod is S tier. Finrod is the most noble elf, though he does make one of the most noble elves. He does make some mistakes. Obviously, he goes with Feanor and the Noldor uh, when they uh, when they create the Oath of Feanor. I don't think he's there. He's not at the Oath of Feanor, but he goes with the elves when they go to Middle Earth because he what is he more out of duty. His wife doesn't want to go, so his wife actually stays behind, and he vows that he'll never find love outside of that. So he is true. He's a true elf insofar as that, though obviously he really shouldn't have left his wife. And he builds Nargothrond, and he is friends with the elves that were still in Middle Earth. He also is friends with men and introduces them to elves and that sort of thing. So he's very friendly with men, and he he sacrifices himself for Baron in the end, and he's one of the first elves to be able to be resurrected in the hall from the halls of Mandos, because elves stay with the world um, while men go outside the bounds when they die. So he's not he is such an awesome story throughout all the tales of the First Age. Celebrimbor is sort of Feanor, but lesser. He is very friendly with the dwarves. He um he is basically seduced um by Sauron in order to build the rings of power. He didn't build the one ring, but he built the other rings of power. He built the elven rings by himself, which made them uh sort of not evil, which is kind of good. So we got that going, or he's got that going for himself. He's also just he dies in a really uh bloody way when he fights um the forces of Sauron and at Ost what is it what's this city? Eregion. In Eregion, he fights and defends Eregion and dies. He's one of Feanor's descendants, but he sort of takes a less greedy approach. So he submits himself to the king, the High King Gilgalad, but he does get basically he falls victim to Sauron's charms. Elrond, I think. Where'd Elrond? Elrond, I think. Let's see. Let's see. I think he goes in or S tier. He is both sort of a diplomat and a warrior. He is very wise. He he's really he's a good father as well as a good husband. He though he though his wife does get injured and have to get sent back to Middle Earth, or sorry, back to Valinor, because she's been so uh, terribly scarred, unfortunately. I think it's a I think he has just a lot to give, and he chooses to be an elf, which is an interesting aspect because him and his brother Elros were given the opportunity to be either an elf or man, and Elros became the king of men, and Elrond became a half elven or an elf, and he was the right hand man of the High King of the Noldor, Gilgalad, and he could have taken on the High Kingship after Gilgalad died, but he didn't. So he does seem to be humble, but that also might have been a bit of a mistake, because maybe I don't know, somebody might have needed to take on that role, but he didn't take on that role. So that maybe was a mistake on his part. Eowyn, she is the shield maiden of Rohan. I think she goes up here. Um, she is a really interesting character because she is twisted by what is it? By the by Saruman and his right hand man, Agrima Wormtongue, into believing that she needs to go out and venture and go and be a warrior and that sort of thing, and it's torments her for such a long time. She feels like she's not. not doing anything. She's not being a leader, but all the times she does things uh, that she should do, that she's taking care of her people and helping her uncle. She does a good job, and then obviously she fulfills a prophecy where, or her and Mary fulfill the prophecy of the destruction of the Witch King of Angmar, because the prophecy is that no man will kill him, and Pip or Mary is a halfling, so he doesn't really he kind of fit. He doesn't really fit the he sort of he fits the description of the kind of person who will destroy the King of Angmar, and then Eowyn is a woman, so therefore together they destroy the Witch King of Angmar. But after Eowyn is healed, after she destroys the Witch King, she's brought out of her desire to be a warrior and finds love with Faramir. Faramir. And I think that's sort of a good example, a good showing of her of that she was not meant to be a warrior. She was meant for better times. She was meant for happiness and not sorrow. And she was so depressed and that sort of thing that she eventually overcomes this. And I think it's sort of an anti feminism in that sense. People think of her as a feminist character, but she really isn't. She really wasn't a feminist character. Eorl or Eol, he is a dark elf who basically forces the White Lady of the Noldor to marry him, and he seems like a what's the word? He's just a straight villain for the most part. He's just kind of weird. He's a really weird or weird elf who just lives in the darkness and wants to stay there and that sort of thing. Kelligorm and Curfin are pretty C tier, I would say, because they they aren't um they aren't very impressive. They're just the more kids of Feanor. They're not really discussed very much. So Finwë. Finwë was the first king of the Noldor. He is killed. I can't remember how he was killed. I think he might have been killed by Morgoth. That sounds about right. He was the only thing keeping the Noldor from basically going to war, from civil war, or from leaving. And his big seemingly mistaken life was when his wife died in Valinor. He chose to take another wife, and that split his. It was one son with his future two sons. Though I'm not really sure he was at fault at that point. But he decides to go west. But I'm not really sure. He's not too much of a character. He's just kind of a plot point, in my opinion. Hurin. Hurin really gets, I think, let's say B tier. He is a great warrior, a good family man, but then he's captured and eventually gives in to Morgoth in alerting him to where what's it where Gondolin is. So I do think that's sort of unfortunate for him and unfortunate for everyone else. But I don't know, like, he's not, and he kills himself at the end. So he's a very tragic figure. Um, Aristor, I think Aristor is a is like what is it? Like a lore master. I think that's all he is. So I'm just gonna put him in D. No, I don't remember too much about him. Denethor, it seemed like he was very jealous of his father, or jealous that his father liked Aragorn more, though he didn't know that it was Aragorn. I think he goes um he's higher up. I think he goes right there in B tier between Arendelle and Celebrimbor. He falls victim to believing what basically the TV is telling him. Palantir basically is TV, and the person controlling the TV, the person controlling the Palantir was Sauron, and he fell victim to basically Sauron convincing him that things were so bad that he basically should give up. And he did give up, and he also basically favored Boromir over Faramir, just like his father sort of favored others and not him. And really, that's just he poured so much love onto Boromir that he failed to show any love for Faramir, and that was one of his big faults overall. Um, Also, if anybody watching, I'd love to hear where I'm going wrong with this. Sort of how you would do better and that sort of thing, because I want to hear that. Findulas, she is probably a B character. She serves her purpose in as the love interest for I think Turin. Turin falls in love with her, and is she or he is unable to protect her in the end. I can't remember exactly why, but basically he is unable to protect her. Celebrian is Arwen's mother and daughter of Galadriel and wife of Elrond. She, I think, is D tier. But she has a little more in the story, as in the history. She has more influence in some ways than the other characters in D tier, and she is attacked by orcs, and because of the pain she went through, she kind of was affected greatly and had a lot of mental trauma, and went to Valinor because Elrond could not heal her. Elros. Elros doesn't really have that much going for him. He is just the first king of Numenor. He builds Numenor up and sort of sets the stage for the way the kingship works in Numenor. And I think that he seems like a good king. He does pick being a man instead of an elf, which is an interesting choice. Eonway is the general of, let's see, where should he is the leader of the Valar. He comes to basically have people, he's the war leader general of the Valar, and he is the emissary of Manwë. So he has some pretty uh he has a great moment, leading the forces of the Valar against Morgoth in a battle that destroys like all of Beleriand in it, because it's such a destructive and massive battle. So Eonwë I would say is leader, maybe right behind Celeborn in B tier, because Celeborn has a bigger role in the story. Frodo, is S tier. Let's see. Frodo goes through so much to get to, he takes it upon himself to leave the Shire in order to protect it. He is an incredible he is self-sacrificing on a level, very very rarely seen. And he's just in and he's so small and so, such a low figure in some ways that it's just incredibly impressive. And his story is at the heart. Obviously, he's pretty much the main character of Lord of the Rings. And I think he's not, in some ways, not as impressive as Aragorn, but in some ways that makes him very impressive because he's is just a small person in this battle, though he does give in to the ring. But I think the point kind of is that everyone would, but he doesn't give in after, it takes him forever to give in, which is pretty impressive. Indus, I think, is uh one of the Valar, or one of the elves' wives. She doesn't really do much, so I think she just goes in C tier. Inarie, I don't really remember who she is, so I'm just gonna put in C tier. Let me know. Wait, why is D and C changed? Did I do that accidentally? Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. Let's put that right. Wait, what just happened? That's weird. I have to fix this. Sorry about this. Just moving things back to where they were. Indus, yeah, I think that's no, okay. Okay, I think that's more or less where we left it. Okay. Oh, there's Luthien. Luthien is S tier. She is an absolutely impressive character. She pleads for her husband to be, sort of revived. She pleads to Mandos, who basically you'd think would be the hardest Valar to convince. And I think it's just incredibly impressive, in my opinion, that she's able to do that. Obviously, and her spells and singing and that sort of thing. That is she's also incredibly beautiful. She's half Maya, half elf, and she's sort of the only version of that. And she's incredibly powerful. And puts to sleep Morgoth. So she's one of the few people to confront the Dark Lord, and that's very impressive to me. Gilgalad was an elven king. Um, he probably goes, yeah, in B tier. Though he doesn't take part in as much story, he does lead the forces of the elves through a long time. He has a long reign in which he leads the elves, and he fights. Him and Elendil fight Sauron head to head, and he gets like burned alive basically because of it. And so he has a really impressive death, and he leads his people very well. He resists Sauron, and he doesn't really fall victim to the usual problems that a lot of the elves have. Gandalf. I think Gandalf it beats Aragorn. I think he's S tier. He is one of the coolest characters. The wizards are just an impressive aspect of Lord of the Rings. I think they are it's what makes one of the reasons it really stands out, I think, is are the wizards, and Gandalf is so interested in in not just in everything. He has a such a universal approach, sort of like he's looking at the bigger picture. Saruman looks at materials, and he's looking at sort of the craftsmanship, while and then the blue wizards seem to be focused on like the east, like they're very east focused, which is interesting. I don't really know what that actually means necessarily, but that's all we're kind of given. And then Radagast is focused on nature, but Gandalf has a holistic approach. We see his focus. He has a knowledge when it comes to when nature, because his horse is one of the greatest horses, uh, and he's able to lead or command that horse. Basically, that horse follows him and knows him and respects him, which is interesting. So, while Radagast focuses only on the what is it the natural side of things, Gandalf has of his focus kind of everywhere. He's working with the what is it the hobbits as well. He's working with the hobbits, which is great. They're the little people, so people like Saruman don't think they're important in any capacity, but Gandalf seems to, and that's an important thing to look at regarding Gandalf. And he puts the puzzle together. He kind of is looking from afar, and then comes to the aid of people when at the right time. He has the best timing, which is impressive. And he doesn't fall in like he doesn't fail in his mission. And even when sort of he kind of fails in the sense, he dies, but he sacrifices himself, and then because of that, he is sent to return, while all the other wizards seem to have failed in their work. Haldir is a elf of Lothlorien. He is a captain, and he doesn't do too much, in my opinion. So I'm thinking he's going to be C tier. He represents the conflict between Gimli's people and his people, and he's a good helper to the Fellowship. But like I said, he doesn't have as much to do. It'd be a little different if he was like the Haldir in the movies, where he leads forces and dies in an epic way. But he doesn't do that in the books. So I'm just gonna keep to uh, the um the other the I'm gonna keep to the books. Feanor has a great impact on the story. He it creates the Silmarils, so I think he's A tier, probably second to Arwen. He or next to Arwen. He is basically the most active, or like what's the word? He he has so much influence on the story with the elves. He brings them into this conflict with Morgoth, and he does so because he wants vengeance. He definitely wants vengeance, and that's why the elves fall into so many traps, because they want this. They follow uh Feanor because he is the High King, and they're in search of vengeance, and it leads to rash decisions, and it leads to them cutting them off from the Valar, which is a big mistake. Fingolfin is the second or the third, I think, High King of the Noldor. He is pretty impressive because he goes up against Morgoth in a duel, in a very epic duel. I think he's though in B. I think he him and Gilgalad are on a similar level. Their stories are kind of similar. They both go up against a Dark Lord and they both die because of it. But Fingolfin goes up against the Dark Lord, so maybe he should be above Gilgalad, though. And I don't think he has that much influence on the story uh, after that. You know, his leadership of the Noldor isn't that active, if I'm thinking about it correctly. Is it? Glaurung is a giant dragon, so I'm just gonna put him in C tier. I don't really know how where monsters should really go. Mablong is I think he's like a soldier in Doriath. Doriath is what I keep forgetting. He's a soldier in Doriath. I think he can go above Glaurung, but he's basically a captain of the Doriath Guard. Ingwe doesn't do too much, though he's the High King of all the elves because he is I think it's Vanyar. He's the leader of the Vanyar elves. He's the king of the Vanyar elves, and he stays in Valinor. So he doesn't really have that much to do because of that. So I think C tier is fine for him. I'm trying to think, who is this? I'm not really sure. I feel like this is let me hold off on that, but I think it's Legolas's father, but I could be wrong. Morwen is Horin's wife. She has an important role in the Children of Hurin story and Turin's uh, legacy. She sends Turin to be raised in Doriath, and then eventually goes off searching for him. And she's an interesting character. I don't think she's A tier, but I think she's just behind Elwing. Let's say that. Who's Arwen? I can't remember who Arwen is. That's a hard one. Galadriel. Galadriel, I think. So Galadriel is Finrod's sister. I think she's behind Frodo in S tier. She is such an impressive part in the story. She's such a strong character, and not in the like Rings of Power sort of way that is obviously emphasized in that story, but she's definitely got her power that she has. Her she makes the lembas bread just like Melian, the Maya. So obviously she learned that from Melian, and I think that's one of the things that makes her very impressive. So anyways, so I think she also carries one of the elven rings, and she rules Lothlorien with her husband Celeborn. and they are a great help to the Fellowship. And she also is very diplomatic and sort of holds back when it comes to when she first arrives in Middle Earth. She's sort of she's slower, she's thoughtful, she doesn't make rash decisions as much, though she did obviously rebel against the Valar, so she's not, incapable of making mistakes. And I think she's just a wonderful character overall. Her power, but she also is restrained and that sort of thing. Um, okay, let's do. Oh no, this is Legolas's father. I don't. Yeah, Faramir is probably just right behind Aragorn in S tier. He is kind of the noble knight, the probably one of the most noble knights. So Aragorn is the noble king, but Faramir is the noble knight. He wants to avoid war as much as he possibly can, but he's also ready to fight when it comes time to do so. He wants to defend the things. He wants to defend that he loves, and not, end up destroying what he loves because of it. And I think that's what, that's basically his whole goal. And he resists taking the ring. So he is better than Boromir. He knows better than Boromir. Nienor has a really strange story. I think she's gonna be in C tier. Um there's a little incest between well, unknowingly, she doesn't know it, but she sort of is Turin's sister, and Turin eventually, like, she loses her memory and she kills herself in the end and that sort of thing. So she's very very tragic figure. I think Celebrian should be go up here, and Mad Blanc should probably be above clear. Anyway, so basically Neonor's, that's we'll get into her story maybe a little more when we get to Turambar. I still don't know who these characters are, but they look like elves. Haleth was a man. I don't think he had much to do. He was just he just I think he fought with the elves against Morgoth, but I think there was failure. Faramir, who dreamed the same dream as Tolkien himself. I'm not sure what you mean, Nicholas, exactly. If you mean like his motives, yes, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know what you mean by dream. Boromir and Faramir both had the same dream that led to Boromir going to Rivendell. Um, so let's next Glorfindel. Glorfindel is an amazing character. He he is one. He is, I think, the only elf that is resurrected and returns to Middle Earth, and he is much more powerful because of it. He is given the powers of like Yanwei, so I think maybe he should be in A tier. Let's see, Boromir, Eowyn, probably above Eowyn. Actually, yeah. Anyway, so he sacrifices himself and destroys and kills a Balrog, very similarly to the way um way Gandalf sacrifices his life. And then he comes back more powerful. Kind of like, it makes me think of Obi-Wan in Star Wars, come back more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Both Gandalf uh, and Glorfindel do that. Glorfindel plays Arwen's part that Arwen plays in the movies. going to save the Fellowship, and Tolkien almost has him go with the Fellowship, but he puts Legolas on the team instead. So so that so anyways, Glorfindel just has a very epic story, and is a very important role in the Lord of the Rings. Finarfin is I think he's, if I'm thinking correctly, he's the brother of Fingolfin. He has does he stay I think he stays in Valinor. So he makes some very good decisions, but I think he doesn't have as much of a role to play in the story. So I think he would still be C tier. Let's see. So, anyways, he stays in Middle Earth, or not Middle Earth. He stays in Valinor, becomes the king of the Noldor in Valinor, um, which is an important role to have. But and all of his kids, I think, are better, like are sort of do better things overall. Like Galadriel and Finrod are both his kids, so I think that says something good about him. Um, Gimli is one of the few dwarves on this list. I think he would be. Let's see. I think he's an A tier. He has an important role, and he shows the qualities between elves and dwarves. Like he sort of fixes the rift between the two, and I think he does it very well. So I think he does that very well. And I think his story is very small. Like his story is very focused in the small aspects. He's not a I mean, he's a major character overall, or not overall. He's a major character in the story of Lord of the Rings, but I think and so on an intimate level, he's a very important character. But he doesn't have as sizable role in the grand scheme of things. And also Gimli is an interesting character, but he's one of the ones that is less characterized, I think, in the Lord of the Rings. Idril is the what is she? She's the daughter of Torgon, I think, the king of Gondolin, and she eventually marries Tur, which we'll get to him later. But she has a very important role to play, and I love the Fall of Gondolin story, so I think I might put her up in A tier. She doesn't do as much, but I think she has a very important role, especially overall in history, keeping uh, their son Arendelle protected. So I think she is up there, if I remember her story correctly. So, what's the hobby zone, John? Not real name. What do you mean by hobby zone? Um, but anyway, so I still don't know who this is, but I could be, if anybody has any ideas who these people are, it's just not coming to me. Um, Legolas, I think, is right by Gimli in A tier. I think maybe above Gimli. He is very important. Actually, no, right below, because he doesn't have as much of a characterization. But I think he has an important role to play in the story. He has a similar role to Gimli, but then again, he's just not as well developed. I like his interplay with Gimli, and he is a noble elf, the a prince, and he eventually brings elves down to Gondor in the end of the story, and I think that's a really interesting part of the appendices. And yeah, I there's not to me there's not that much to talk about regarding uh, Legolas. So sorry to anybody who's like their favorite character. Matan is the father-in-law of Feanor, and basically realizes that, or he's the one that teaches Feanor the craft of, the craftsmanship, and that's important. But also, he doesn't have an overall role, though he does stop teaching his son-in-law how to do it because he realizes that he's going down a bad path. Um. Oh, I guess Mihedros and Maglor are down here. Then I don't know who um these people are. If anybody knows who Ambarusa are, I don't know who that is. Okay. Mihedros is B tier, and Maglor, I think, should be C tier, but higher in C tier. Above D or K. As John says, when people are really interested to the extent of ranked characters, being able to keep track of so many characters, it frightens me. A good way for good fiction, of course. Yeah, no, I mean, I can't keep track of all of them. It's just that's my mind. My mind gets kind of hyper fixated on things, so then it's easier for me to remember this type of thing. So really, that's kind of how my mind works. Uh, so it has benefits. It's not like I don't think I've actually read all this stuff enough to like really for most people to remember it, but because I'm get hyper fixated on something, that's just how it works. Mary, Mary and Pippin are really great. I just love their stories. Mary and Pippin are both S tier in my book. Let's see, where's Pippin? Where's Pippin? I found Samwise. Hmm. Where is Pippin? I don't know. Um, but yeah. Let me see. Hmm. Is he not on here? That's weird. If Mary is on here but not Pippin, that's weird. I think he's here. I just think I'm blind probably. At this point. Niana teaches Gandalf. She's a Vala that teaches Gandalf. So I think she's C tier. She's important, but not that important. I think this is the Balrog. Oh, there's Pippin. I finally found him. Okay. Pippin and Mary are two of my favorite characters. I love their stories of just how like they start drinking that Ent water and they become they become taller, and they have such an important role in the Shire afterwards. Let's bring Samwise up. I know uh was Tolkien considers Samwise the main character of the story. So I'm just gonna bring him right above Frodo because he is the helper, he is the servant, and I think that has in a lot of ways more merit. Uh, John, not real name. I don't know how I managed to diss you, but I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to. Um, if I did, I apologize. Um, but really, Merry and Pippin are just really impressive figures in my opinion. uh, Mary, when I first read the books, I didn't really think about how until the end, Mary, Pippin, Sam, and Frodo all have very important roles in the Shire, in like the hierarchy of the Shire. Like they really do. They have um, incredible roles. You know, Mary is something of Buckland. What is it? Is the mayor of Buckland? No, something of Buckland. Pippin uh is the Thrain, who's kind of the sort of the regent for the king. He becomes that. All of them don't have their positions in the story until the end because that's when they grow up. They inherit these positions. But it's really important that all of them go on this adventure because they need to learn how to be good leaders, and then they come back and they you know defeat Saruman in the scouring of the Shire. And I think that's so impressive to me. Maybe one day I'll do like a pip like just a Hobbits video. This kind of makes me want to do a Hobbits video. Mandos, probably up there with his wife, or maybe actually a little higher because he has a bit more activity to do. Ordrith is, I can't remember who he's the son of. I think Finrod, maybe. Anyways, he kind of has just a little bit to do. Turin is just an awesome character, but I think he would still be in. I think he was below Baron. I think that's probably the best place I could put him. We talked about him a little bit, but he's just, he is experiencing all the chaos after the defeat of the good forces at the Nirith the Nodiad or something like that. I can't pronounce the names very well. But anyway, so he goes through a lot of different phases. He's, kind of an elven prince in some sense, though he's a man. And he then becomes an outlaw. Then he becomes a advisor at Nargothrond, causes the destruction of Nargothrond, and then eventually his sword kills him, or he kills himself with the sword. Tom Bombadil is a pretty cool character overall. Very, very fun character. Very interesting. At this point, I'm gonna try and put the characters in the right order, but it's hard to keep track of all of them. Tor is actually S tier in my opinion. He's above his cousin. He's not impressive as the hobbits in my opinion, though he just has an epic story. Getting the people, he sort of has a Trojan, sort of who's that story about like the Trojan War, the end of the Trojan War, and it's the Aeneas. He's kind of the Aeneas character, bringing his people to safety after being destroyed in the Trojan War, kind of. Um, is this Manway? Manway is pretty cool. The king of the Valar. So, but and he directs the eagles and that sort of thing. They answer to him. So I think he's up in B tier overall, just because he doesn't do as much. Treebeard's a pretty cool character. He's not just in Lord of the Rings, but he's it would be assumed that he is also at the fighting um at the destruction of Doriath. So but yeah. Um so yeah, that's what am I thinking of? Sorry. Treebeard fought at basically the Ents come up and destroy the dwarves who killed Thingol. So that's pretty cool. Turon is a pretty cool king. Again, I'm just very partial to the story of the Fall of Gondolin, especially the extended version that you get in the Fall of Gondolin book. And I think he's A tier with his daughter, Idriel. Varda is probably one of the coolest of the Valar. She's up in A tier. She's the sort of Vala of the stars. So she has a great importance to the elves, and she's also Elbereth. That's her other name. So she has such an important role to play, and she does such a she's so interesting because her and Manwë. So Manwë uh can knows his powers are the wind and stuff, and hers is the light, so she can light things so he can see things farther. And I think that the duo is pretty impressive. Saruman is probably an A tier villain. I'm just gonna fill these out, and then we're gonna get to I'll talk more about them quickly, like after, because this stream's going pretty long. Yavanna is probably B tier. I don't remember which of the Vala she is, but she's anyways. Sauron is probably an S tier villain because he kind of does more with less in a lot of ways. Thranduil is cool because he kind of he doesn't even need to be named in The Hobbit, though he's there. So I'm just gonna say he's in C tier. Thingol is a pretty awesome character, though he becomes, because of his hubris, he gets killed. So A tier. Thorin is a pretty cool character, but he's also old and he doesn't have as much uh, roles to play because The Hobbit isn't as detailed. So Morgoth is probably A tier. I think Sauron's a better villain. Tolkos is a cool character, a fighter, just with his hands. He doesn't need any weapons. I think this is Iluvatar? Oh no, this is Ulmo. Wait, I can't tell. No, Alway. Never mind, that's Alway. I can't remember him very well, but he was one of the leaders of the um what is it, of one of the hosts of the elves. um what makes a good villain then? I just think that uh Sauron makes a better villain than Morgoth because he kind of does more with less. He has to be more cunning than Morgoth does. Morgoth is sheer power. He sort of, because he is the devil character, he has much more power than any of us. He much more powerful than the elves, and he sort of just uses that to his advantage. I think this is Almo. Almo is one of my favorite Valar. I think he goes up in S tier regarding for especially amongst the Valar. If anybody can tell me who any of these other characters are, I will. Uh, I I can't tell who they are. So if anybody remembers, let me know and I'll put them in a place. But at the moment, I don't. I can't tell. So this is my attempt at a tier list. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do more tier lists like this. Uh, I do, I don't think it's as, it's a lot of characters, but even then, I don't think it's as thorough as I'd like it to be. Um, but yeah. So, but really, yeah. So John wants to know again what a, like. I mean, he said this already, and I kind of answered it. What makes a good villain? I really think just Morgoth is this, sort of this power, this force overall, and I think that's an important element. I Arwen is the like the Vala. I can't I can't tell what the other ones are. The names from left to right. If somebody wants to tell me what they are and read them, but I can't tell what they are. I don't see where the words are. I see some of the words, but they're also kind of blocked. And then I don't know who Ambarusa is. So, anyways, these are the characters that I'm able to manage. Um, so yeah, that's what I've got. Actually, Arwen's a Maya, not a Vala. She's a Maya of the sea. Anyways, so let me know of any of these characters you're really interested in. I can talk more about them in the future. I'll look them up. Who is Rog? That's I don't know who Rog is, unfortunately. I don't remember who he is. Also don't know who Muriel Parenday is. I don't know why. I don't remember those characters. So if you want to remind me of who they are, John, but I don't remember. So that's if there's any questions, just let me know. Uh any other questions? Uh I'll also focus on maybe Lord of the Rings, like specifically that tier list might be better. By species? What do you mean, John? What do you mean by species? Um, is there anybody that I got really wrong, in your opinion, that you think should be a lot higher? It'd be great to hear what you guys think regarding that. I think this is the longest stream I've done by myself. Oh, okay, so one for the elves, one for the hobbits. Yeah, I could probably do that. I'd have to create it. This one I was able to find. I think the or do you tier list, or do you want to just explanations of the characters, like a deep dive? Is that what you're talking about regarding each species? And I think it's race in Tolkien's work, but yeah, he uses race like species in some ways. Yeah, Thorin does redeem himself. Um Thorin comes out to fight and dies in the end, and he tells Bilbo that he thinks, "Oh, where's Bilbo? Where the heck is Bilbo? They don't even have Bilbo on here. That's weird." But Bilbo, he tells Bilbo that he wishes others were more like Bilbo, and that it would have been better world, or there'd be better world if they were more like Bilbo. For all of you who came in sort of late, it'd be great if you went back and watched the rest. Also, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I'll probably be doing more tier lists for fun live streams like this. If you have any other things you want me to do, like for live streams, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say and see if I can do them to the best of my ability. So if there's anything else, I'll just let it go for maybe a minute longer. And if there's anything else, I'll answer or reply to. Also, if you really did like this episode, if you did like this stream, please share it. Like, tell people about it. I think it's a pretty fun thing to do. I know other people do these types of tier lists, but I think this one is a lot of fun. I don't think I've seen anybody do all these different characters. So, and also, it's very tiring. Yeah, where did I put Thorin? Let me see. I think did I put Thorin? Oh, yeah. I guess probably Thorin should be higher. Maybe B tier. I'll just move him to B tier. He's definitely has a bigger role than Thranduil, so that is probably better to put him a little higher. But yeah, that's my list. I do. John's right about that, moving him higher, because because I think I did that kind of quickly. So some of them I thought took longer to do. So it's best for me to move them up, especially. I'll probably have to rethink some of them a little bit, but yeah. If I didn't know a character, I'm sorry about that. I don't have I think I have decent memory, but I don't have uh that as much I don't I can't remember everything. That's for sure. I know I'm always better at remembering things when I'm like off stream or listening to somebody else's YouTube channel, and then then it's like, yeah, I understand that. So when you're doing a video, I think it's harder to remember things than it is when you're just listening to it. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Again, please comment, like, and subscribe, and join the Discord. The link for that is in the description. So please join the Discord to continue the conversation outside of YouTube, as well as you'd be able to keep up with all the videos. So get notified. YouTube's really bad at notifying people when the videos are out. So thank you all for watching. Have a blessed Tuesday, and hope you enjoyed the episode. Bye.